Welcome to Self-Care on Board. My name is Geraldine Hardy, and I'm the host for you today on Yachting International Radio. Today, I have a special guest, Despo Pishiri, who is also part of my company and the lead for the emotional and naturopathic well-being. Welcome, Despo. It's so nice to have you back.
Thank you for inviting me, Gerati. Thank you.
Good. So maybe before we start, some of us we had already an interview with you about, I think, last year. So maybe you can give us a brief idea what you're doing, what is your background. And so Despo works with me on my own startup called Alina, and it's actually Alina Protocol. And we are combining longevity technology with the ancient practices. But Despo is really focused on the ancient practices with emotional healing.
So yes, it was a few years ago. Let me tell you give you a little bit of background. A few years ago, I was in the corporate. As a young person, when I was young, I was displaced. My country went through war and I was displaced. And I didn't know that pain, because I was very young, was with me for a very long time. And it followed me into my adult years. And, I didn't know that was the root cause of the problem. But anyway, I ended up with a nervous breakdown. And at that time, I left my corporate role and I completely changed direction. It was sort of, and this is what I do today, it was a calling, so that nervous breakdown was my calling to change direction, to get into something more meaningful. And this is when I started realizing that, how I healed myself, which it was to change the way I think. I realized that my problem, my traumas created certain beliefs about myself. And those are the beliefs that cause my suffering. So it was such a great realization, and it only happened once I decided and I put myself first and I left the corporate. So that realization came, and I healed myself physically and mentally, and then I turned it into a profession. So I became a clinical hypnotherapist, first a naturopath, and I created my own courses based on how I healed myself and how my understanding now of, what true healing is from a very deep point of view.
So thank you for sharing your personal story. I think we all have to kind of walk through all of these experiences to walk our talk to become actually to step into the role as a healer or therapist.
Yeah.
So your background is, so you are actually certified naturopath and also clinical hypnotherapist, a sound healer, an intuitive guide, and you have written also, you're about to publish your second book. So you have written already one book. Just tell us a little bit about this.
So do you want me to talk about the books?
Yeah.
The first book, is really a spiritual self-help book, in a way describing my journey. But at the same time, what has changed in me and my understanding of what life is all about. Everybody thinks that we are our traumas, we are our experiences, and we have to live through that lens. But actually, it's not. Life is a journey of growth. And I realized that, at the time that I had my own nervous breakdown, that every bad thing that happened to me, it was an opportunity for growth. So, and this is what also my course is all about, is taking these opportunities, and instead of keeping people in the victimhood, is turning those those experiences into power, into opportunities for growth, spiritual growth, as well as I have seen from my clients how when they change the way they think, their life changed. Even in relationships, professionally, work. So it's changing the way you think, it's changing, the beliefs, the faulty, unhealthy beliefs that you created about yourself during the time that bad things were happening to you. So we don't dispute that bad things happen to you, but that interpretation that you put, or yeah, the interpretation of how you saw them and you made them about you, the unhealthy beliefs, yes.
Yes. So looking at this now, the topic of this podcast today, we are looking at the relationship between trauma, addiction, and disease. Now, Despo is part of the Alina protocol, which is the startup that I have created to go into the root causes of healing, not the symptoms, which means we do combine modern technology, longevity, which is an overused word. Let's redefine it as like a more sustainable approach on healing that goes above and beyond only the physical realm. It goes actually into the mental, emotional, spiritual, the wisdom body, and eventually the physical. And therefore, what do you think? How do you define the relationship between trauma and addiction and disease?
They're all related, actually. So let me explain to you how the body reacts when we have, when we have trauma. Trauma actually, from a spiritual perspective, stays in the body. It's an any unresolved situation in our lives, like trauma, which is, we call it trauma because it's unresolved. It's not gone anywhere. We still play around and it's still causing us pain. So that unresolved pain, first of all, stays. And in general, not in general, all the time, trauma is stored in the heart, which is the center of our being. So it's very important to resolve trauma, not to touch it up and, go and have a few sessions and then go back to your victimhood. It's important to resolve it because that negative energy stays in the body. So that's your energetic level.
It's
Yeah.
and it's actually not repeating the story again and again.
Exactly.
Because now we go into the mental, like your nervous system.
Exactly.
No. Yes.
So, what I mentioned earlier is that, so my technique is, instead of keeping them in the victimhood and keeping that unresolved energy in the body, we convert that into the experience doesn't go away because it's real, it's a memory, right? But what goes away is the meaning we put to it. So then the vibration changes. The
Yes.
frequency changes. So we don't take away the memory, we take away its vibration. So we turn it into power, we turn it into an opportunity. So that is your energetic level. But, you have to remember that all trauma starts with, with the nervous system. So when the nervous system is on alert all the time because of the pains we have, it means it triggers your endocrine system to be also on alert, overproducing cortisol, disrupting, the gut. All our hormones become disrupted when, especially for women. Now we see also a lot of women that went through trauma, actually they go into early menopause. Why do they do that? It's because, your whole hormonal endocrine system is completely disrupted. So, it's good to the nature has made us in such a way that to protect ourselves, our system, the nervous system needs to be on alert. But so it's, to protect us from danger. So that's why we have what they call the sympathetic system, the fight and flight response. But with people that have gone through trauma, that mechanism is like the button is on the on position all the time.
Yes.
It doesn't turn off. So can you imagine that in your whole life, or the majority of your life, you have that your endocrine system working against you? And this is then is where the physical disease starts, right? So then we have the physical disease that is started from a trauma. And we can see a lot of people with autoimmune disease, heart disease. If you take them and talk to them, they had trauma. There is no one that has a serious disease which didn't start with a trauma.
And then it normally kicks in if you do not want to look at the trauma and you want to kind of ease our nervous system, we go into addiction and escapism.
Exactly. You know, what is addiction actually? Addiction is a way of filling a gap.
Yeah.
We call it the void. When a person, is in such a great pain, and this is why it's, we need to, people judge people that have addictions, especially when it comes to drug and alcohol. And drugs and alcohol, if you know anybody that has these addictions, the pain, they don't need your judgment. They need your compassion. So a lot of people judge them, and call them names, but actually anybody with these addictions requires love and compassion. That is the only way, actually, when somebody goes into this, is because their trauma, they interpreted it when they were young as nobody loves me, I'm unloved. So when you keep judging them, what are you telling them? You're telling them that you're right, you're unloved, nobody cares, nobody loves you. So you're actually pushing them deeper because you keep validating that they're right, that they're unloved. So what alcohol does and drugs does to them, it numbs the pain for that period of time that they are taking it. And then they come out of it, and then, they need a bit more to numb the pain again. And then obviously, they can't come of it. It's a vicious cycle. So it's all linked. Mental disease, physical disease, addictions, they're all part of this vicious cycle called trauma.
So, for those of you who are listening, Despo has healed her own autoimmune disorder. It was Hashimoto's, wasn't it? So you have gone through the whole path, and also I think you shouldn't say diabetes. You had insulin resistance, and Despo has helped me with Epstein-Barr virus, another autoimmune disorder, and also the remnants of the benign tumor in my left breast. And we actually went into the root cause, which was trauma, which was the fear. In my case, it was the fear of not being good enough, the self-worth that also exacerbated my anxiety, and the fear of being abandoned. And now they're based on core fears. Could you please explain us what these are and what you have observed in many of your patients?
When it comes to trauma has, if you put it on a scale of 1 to 10, there is a trauma that is considered mild trauma, and there is trauma that is considered very serious trauma.
Yes.
And the more serious it is, it's like an earthquake. When it's, mild, it's going to cause a little damage, but the bigger it is, the more damage it's going to cause. The same it is with trauma. People that have gone through abuse at home, alcoholic parents, abuse, physical, mental at home, or through war displacement, which is very common to hear these days. These people carry a lot of trauma, what we call the big trauma. So it's going to have a bigger impact in their lives and, what they are going through. Bullying, of course, it's trauma, not as, as big as being displaced or losing somebody you loved, but it's still trauma. So it's also the interpretation of trauma, somebody privileged, not having received a gift that they wanted, they could interpret it as trauma, right? When you're young, you can interpret that as nobody loves me, nobody cares. but it doesn't carry the same weight as the big trauma of war, displacement, abuse, physical and sexual. It doesn't. If I may add something that is very important, I find that actually men are carrying more pain than women. That's why you will find also that there is more addiction happening with men rather than women. Not that women don't become addicted, they do, but if you take them as a proportion, more men are addicted to drugs and alcohol than women. And there is a very important factor here, is because women are taught when they are, from the time we are young, to be vulnerable, to share, to talk about it. So we have a group of friends, so we share our experiences. So we have that support. So women having that support and being programmed to express, it helps them a lot. But from my experience, 90% of my male clients never speak about it because they have been programmed since they are young. Men don't cry. You need to be strong. You don't need to share, because it makes you feel weak. So they carry their pain. They don't share it because they don't want to be judged or labeled. And it's so impactful when they start a therapy whereas they actually let go. So I have seen this difference between men and women, and it's amazing how women suffer more. Sorry, men suffer more. And we don't see it, we focus a lot on women these days. And not that they don't deserve it. It's good to focus on women and the rights of women, but not to neglect men. Men
Yeah,
carry a lot of pain, and we should not continue the narrative that men are strong and men shouldn't be vulnerable and they shouldn't share their experiences.
absolutely. Yeah. So coming back, so what is your approach so different and when you do therapy? To just give you an idea, guys, we have here too. Despo has also published now on my website a diploma on clinical, spiritual, and transpersonal hypnotherapy, and then also a certification program, which is the transpersonal psychology method spiritual coaching certification. Now, please give us an idea. Why are you different, and how is it different to just going to a cognitive behavior therapist or a psychologist or psychiatrist?
The normal path of therapy is to acknowledge the client. I will tell you one example of one, to understand. So there was one of my clients that came to me, and she was, I would call it, very poor, in a way that she had a business, her clients were not paying her, and she was stuck in this vicious cycle of not having money. So we went through therapy, and she wasn't getting it. She wasn't getting that where she was there is not her clients to be blamed, but actually her for not taking responsibility of her life, of her business, and allowing them to abuse her and not pay her on time.
Enabling. Okay.
Enabling them, exactly. Thanks for giving me correcting me. So it's important to understand that, if we stay in that state of victimhood, we cannot move because we blame others for our misery. So where my technique is different, my technique is empowering, is giving you the power back to claim your life rather than stay in because you can't change people. You can't change your clients. You can't change others. The only person you can change is you. And taking responsibility is the number one factor. So I always, when my clients come with this technique, also is showing them the mirror. The answer is within you. It's not within others. And a lot of my clients, when they come, they say, they start talking about the parents and but I don't focus on that because I've never met them. I can't judge people that are not there to defend themselves. So I focus on my client because the answer is within them. So then that's how the technique works. The technique works, it gives you back the power to reclaim what's yours rather than waiting for the others to change to suit you, because it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen.
No. And once we have shifted the frequency and neutralized this trauma,
Exactly.
everything else is going to change. Just quantum physics. This is quantum entanglement going.
Exactly. It's what we call quantum physics.
Yeah.
And it's very important to understand that unless, and I have seen it with so many clients, and this particular client that I started talking to you about, I will go back to the story to see how she shifted. So I was talking to her about, how she should take responsibility and, so my whole technique, but she wasn't getting it. So I get up. I always keep a board in my office. And I wrote in big letters, like shouting letters on my board, "You are not a victim." So it hit her. She said to me, that's where she shifted. It's like I didn't want to shout in her face, but I wrote it in capital letters. And I sat there and she looked at it and she said, my shift happened then. I took my power back. Now, not only she gets paid, she can't keep up with her businesses. She doesn't put up with nonsense. She took her power back. She doesn't put up, if client says, I will not pay you, if they don't pay her, she says, I'm not going to do the job. And she walks away. So she took her power back, and the shift happens, sometimes when you hold the mirror to people and say, you are not a victim. You have the power. So my technique actually gives the power back to them rather than keeping you in the powerless position. And it's actually such a much deeper learning, because even though the transpersonal psychology course doesn't cover the deeper aspects of past life, like, the hypnosis does. This is why I say that they go hand in hand.
Ancestor trauma, which means many traumas that we don't own them, but they come from our ancestors.
Exactly. So we have
Carry them along.
ancestral trauma that impacts our life. And during hypnosis, with past life regressions, age regressions, we can actually resolve even ancestral traumas. And we have so many, especially the parents, the grandparents, or the parents fought in war. One died, we carry their traumas through this life. So we have those, but also everything is linked to, everything is a spiritual learning. So through the hypnosis courses, we actually go a little bit further, deeper, and look at how the past lives have impacted what is happening in this life. So I call it a spillover. So we always have a spillover from a past life, things that have not been resolved and they need to be resolved. So then you have a different layer of healing, going deeper. So even though my technique is great, the transpersonal psychology, when you also combine it with the hypnosis, clinical and spiritual hypnotherapy, you have a different level, because your understanding of why this happened to you becomes, give you that awareness, the deeper awareness. So it's very important. And I can see that for my clients, when after we do the cognitive, they reconnect with loved ones that they haven't been spoken for a while. They find peace, but they always say, I want to understand it, why I choose these parents. or why that experience happened to me, rather than now I understand that I've taken responsibility. But then when you go back, you realize that every experience that happened to them, when we do past life regressions, and in fact, I'm just writing another book, it's transcripts from my regression therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everything is linked to the experiences. So our experiences in this life, our traumas, our upbringing, anything that happened to us, the bullying, the displacement, has a deeper way of healing. So it's important to understand that nothing happens, in a vacuum. It just happens to
No.
me because I am unlucky. No, it happens to you because you selected this experience for your spiritual growth. And this is why, and as I said, this is a different level of healing, a deeper level of healing. And this is why I keep insisting that, we are a soul having a human experience and not the other way around. Every life, every experience has a purpose. It's been carefully, selected, chosen, like a script of a movie, for us to experience it and learn from it and become better and grow, become better human beings. So, yeah, so this is how it all interlinks.
So looking at this, especially for those of you listeners who go through severe transitions or collective trauma because of war, you have been displaced, or you have experienced some grave situations that, if this is physical, sexual abuse, and you want to be able to understand more and go deeper, and everyone can overcome addictions, everyone can overcome disease, and it is the root cause to look at. And courses like, or diplomas or certifications, they give, like what we offer here, give you the power to work on yourself, but you again have different tools in your box for your clients and patients.
Yeah.
So, and it is a different way of healing that is coming more and more upfront now these days, and it's more and more accepted in society.
Can I add there, Geraldine? When I started my path of becoming a healer, I never did it to help others. I did it to help myself.
Yes.
And, when I was in the class and, when I started my hypnotherapy course and the teacher asked, why do you do it? I said, I do it to heal myself. And she said, do you see it as a profession? Because it's a professional qualification. I said, no, I'm just doing it for me. And, what has changed in me is during the certification process, I had to present 10 cases. That's how you could get qualified.
Yes.
You have to approve to them that you can actually do this. So I was very blessed because, I had so many volunteers to help me. And I saw the impact that had in them. And then from there, people, they referred me, even though they were my case studies, they started referring me people, and I said, oh, this is great. I started helping people. So we always start this to help us, but we should not forget that these qualifications are certified, so you can actually switch direction. You can become a healer, you can become a hypnotherapist or a spiritual coach. So you can actually take it as a profession. The other day I was reading an article how obviously now psychology is not as popular as it used to be because a lot of people go to coaches. Why coaching? Is because coaching gives you more direction and setting goals and reaching goals. So, and coaches normally charge more than psychologists. So now what psychologists are doing? They're doing coaching courses, and because they say, I will make more money if I go into coaching. So a lot of them actually now they are switching from psychology into coaching because they realize that why people are paying more is because when they do coaching, they get better results. So a lot of them now started sort of getting different certifications, changing their technique that they learn at university, and because they get paid more and also they see better results. So, but it is these are qualifications that you can utilize them to heal yourself. But ultimately, if it's your path and you are drawn to it, you can even change, direction and become a healer. But this is what happened to me. I completely changed direction, and I have never regretted it.
And this is a key thing that many people misunderstand and or do not lay great importance to. Normally, if you are a healer and you have done the work within yourself, on yourself, it is way more powerful because you walked your talk. And you can share this gift. That's normally how we get initiated. We have to go through the shitty times and have to heal ourselves.
Actually, what you said is very powerful, and that is very important. Nothing happens by coincidence, doing those courses and, eventually doing it, nothing happened. So it's very important for people to understand that unless you heal yourself, you will not attract, because your vibration is such a low vibration.
Yes.
When you are broadcasting a message to the universe, poor me, I'm a victim, how would you attract any clients? You cannot attract clients while you are broadcasting a message that I am in pain. How can you help others when you haven't healed yourself?
Yeah.
So, and as I said, most people that do these courses, it's not that they had a wonderful life and they're making a ton of money. And then I said, okay, I had enough of making money and I will go, I had such a beautiful life and I will switch it. No, it's because they had pain.
Yeah.
Or somebody in their lives has pain. And they think, you know what, if I do this, most possibly I'll help my brother, my sister, my child, my husband. So they know that they can help somebody. Of course, themselves is number one, but also they get into it because they think they will help somebody. The other day I was talking to a lady that her brother is alcoholic. And after our discussion, she realized that her brother is not just a bad person. He has a lot of pain.
Yes.
And when she made that connection, she says to me, when you run the courses, I'll do the course because I want to help my brother. So you see, how a lot of people get into it to help others, in their family, but ultimately, sometimes it becomes a profession.
Yes, exactly. So for those of you out there who would like to learn more about it, change professions, come off the boat, this is what we offer. Despo is offering kindly courses or certificates and diplomas on my website. One, the core diplomas is naturopathic and emotional healing. So you are actually the lead of this part of the Alina protocol. And there's one diploma in integrative naturopathic medicine. And there's a diploma on what we have discussed today, which is clinical, spiritual, and transpersonal hypnotherapy. Then we have a certificates that you are offering, which is the Biorenium Method, Functional Nutrition and Wellness Coach. And then the second one is what we have discussed today, the Transpersonal Psychology Method, Spiritual Coaching Certification.
Yeah.
So in the future, we're going to speak about the other arm, which is the wellness and the naturopathic protocols. To give you guys some input, I have used one of the naturopathic protocols from Despo Pishiri 2, one which was to eradicate Epstein-Barr virus totally in my body. And the second one was to reinsure, especially because of my age, that there's still fertility in my body. And yeah, so we actually pretty much from a longevity perspective, have turned the clock back.
Yeah.
And this is what thanks to Despo and also Dr. Carter, you will meet him in the future also on these podcasts. We all work together. We actually are the Alina protocol, which is we wave in all of our tools together and adapt them to specific pathologies. If there's diabetes, Hashimoto's, metabolic disorders, cardiovascular problems. Yeah. Yes, is there anything else you want to add? When are we going to have your book out in the store?
Actually, the second book is called Heal, and they are transcripts from my channeling sessions. I don't want to bore the listener. So about how to heal the body naturally. So the first volume is basically transcripts of my channeling sessions about physical disease, and what becomes evident, when you read the book, which will be published very soon. Actually, it's already with the publisher. The body has the innate ability to repair itself. It doesn't need chemicals that they are pushed by the big pharma to us, because the medicine or the medical profession, I go to the doctors, do my test. I don't look down on the profession, but their way is to manage a disease, manage the symptoms. This is what they are trained to do. They are trained also like this because they are taught that, if you have faulty genes and if you got diabetes from your mother, from your father, there's nothing you can do about it. But food is medicine.
Yeah.
And this is why the one course is about how to heal disease with just food. And the other course, the naturopathy course, integrates food and herbs and ancient, as you said, practices, because for thousands of years, the Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, the medicine that is being used in South America, in Africa, what did they use? They used natural medicine. And this medicine has been suppressed. And when the modern medicine became available, and slowly started fading away because, people that they were practicing ancient techniques, they were ridiculed. But luckily now is everything coming back. Why is coming back? Because actually science itself has proven that actually what these herbs contain, that they actually heal the body. So for everything that the pharmaceutical companies have, we have an equivalent better natural one, so instead of balancing your sugar with medication that the doctor prescribes, we have berberine, fenugreek, we have cinnamon. These are medicines that they help with insulin sensitivity. So we know that they have compounds in them that they actually help with insulin sensitivities. This is not the ancients telling us, because they didn't know why. But now the modern medicine, modern science is telling us, that's why it works. That's why berberine works. So it suppresses the appetite. So we know now that the ancient medicine works better than modern medicine, because the ancient medicine doesn't harm the body. Yeah. And it actually helps repair the body. So a combination of food and combination of herbal remedies, you can take the body back to its own, sort of like factory reset, factory settings. So resetting the whole body. And by doing that, what you're doing, you are repairing naturally your cells, because when the cells are imbalanced, disease happens. So the minute you give them the nutrients they need, and they start repairing. When the cells repairs, also the DNA repairs. The genes that cause the disease, if it's genetic, they start turning off because you turn them on, and with your mind, negative thinking, but you can actually turn them off. The same way you turn them on, you can turn them off. And this is longevity, actually. As you said, when you fix your diet, your mental state, I call it the mental diet and the physical diet. When you fix those, when you detox your body, when you alkaline your body, eventually the body starts repairing itself. Your DNA is your program, is your auto repair program. So that's what that course is all about.
Great. So perfect. Wow. Despo, so thank you so much for being on the show today. And we will definitely hear more from you in the future. And guys, just go on the website, www.geraldinehardy.com, and like this post. I have 10,000 reviews, 500 likes. So just press the like button, the heart button. And you can also follow Despo on Instagram. And I'm going to tag you. And yes, so thank you so much for your time. And we definitely have you next time on board.
Thank you for inviting me, Geraldine. Thank you.
Thank you.
If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.